A new Pharaoh arises, and he doesn't remember Joseph. He enslaves the people because they're becoming too numerous and becoming a threat. So he puts them to work and embitters their lives, building store cities of Pithom and Ramses, and makes them create bricks out of mud and straw.
It was intriguing to see this type of construction in different parts of Egypt. Were any of these bricks molded by the hands of Israelite slaves? However, Mansour was quick to remind me that these types of mud bricks are present throughout Egypt's history and don't prove any connection to the Israelites. In his search for evidence that fits the idea of Israelite slavery, Professor James Hoffmeyer focuses on the first half of the New Kingdom because he favors a Ramesses Exodus date. There he finds a very interesting set of evidence. It states in the biblical story that the Hebrews were supposed to make bricks from mud and straw. Is there any evidence of that?
We have two lines of evidence that this practice referred to in Exodus chapter 1 and Exodus chapter 5 really was the sort of thing going on. We have the depiction in the tomb of Rechmireh. He was a vizier or prime minister under Thutmose III. We can see POWs, both Semites from Canaan and Syria, working alongside prisoners of war from Nubia, black Africans. And there they are making bricks, overseen by Egyptian taskmasters with sticks. And so it's very clear that this was the treatment of prisoners of war. And we see these foreigners making bricks in southern Egypt for a building project at Karnak Temple. And I'm sure that picture could be replicated to other parts of Egypt, especially in the north. Secondly, we also have, from the same time period, the 15th century, the 18th dynasty, we also have pictures of agricultural work, especially work in the vineyards, picking grapes, stomping on grapes to make juice and wine. Here again, we find these same prisoners of war engaged in agriculture. Exodus 1:14 actually says they worked in brick and mortar and agriculture. So interestingly, the very two areas the Bible says the Israelites were forced to work in, agriculture and construction work, is the very two places we see this sort of work going on in private tombs in Egypt in the 15th century BC.
Now, were all these prisoners of war, could these have been people such as the Bible states that were actually there that became suspicious and then were forced into labor?
In the case of the tomb of Rechmireh, tomb 100 in the Theban necropolis, it actually tells us they were hawked, they were plundered, they were prisoners brought back from the king's campaigns. So, and these happen to be in the south in Luxor. The problem is we don't have corresponding tombs for what was going on in the Delta, where the Hebrews were. So we lack that kind of evidence. Also during the 15th century BC, we have the beginnings of the deportations of prisoners of war from the wars of the pharaohs Thutmose I, Thutmose III, Amenhotep II. These are bringing prisoners of war both from Syria and Canaan as well as from Nubia to the south. All these prisoners of war are flooding into Egypt and are being pressed into hard labor for the state. So we have both the old Semitic population, second, third generation of whom are still around in the 15th, 14th, 13th century, and then you have the new population of Semites who were brought in as POWs from the campaigns of the Egyptian pharaohs. So there was a significant network of foreign people living in Egypt during the New Kingdom.
While this is good evidence for the presence of Semitic slaves doing the right types of work, prisoners of war do not match the Bible's account of the early Israelites. Meanwhile, David Rowe pointed to a different set of evidence that fits the pattern found in Egypt's Middle Kingdom, beginning with finds from Avaris. Well, what happened next? What does the archaeological record show?
What we then see is that the graves of these people, we begin to see in the bones deterioration in the quality of life. We see Harris lines in the bones, which indicate famine, shortage of food and nutrients. These people suddenly have become impoverished. Not only that, but we start to see larger houses, which seem to be Egyptian in design, and then smaller houses attached to them, which seem to be servants' houses. And this is what we see for the very first time. And we even find papyri with lists of slaves with Semitic names on them at this period as well.
Tell me more about the bones.
If we look at the cemetery population, that's the dead, if you like, and that's the evidence we have of the living, is the dead. And we look at their graves, we find something very interesting happens. At the beginning, these people seem to prosper. The quality of their lives is very good. But all of a sudden, at some point in the story, we see a degeneration. We see a degeneration in the burials and the actual graves themselves. The investigation of the anthropological data has shown us that we are dealing with people who lived probably to about 32 to 34 years of age and then died. That's the typical life expectancy of the time. So we're not talking about a people who prospered and went on to live into their 50s and 60s, as you might expect. These people had really tough lives. So how do we explain that? What is the mechanism that we would understand why these people only lived to such a short age? And the obvious answer is slavery.
So you're saying that this group that came in that was prosperous then fell on hard times?
Yeah. We've got a situation of prosperity followed by a lack of prosperity and a shortage of life. So it seems very clear that these Asiatic peoples, these people have come from the north, speaking a Semitic language, who first of all prospered in this region, have suddenly been enslaved.
Is there any physical evidence that there was slavery of Hebrew-type people in Egypt?
There's one particular document which is quite amazing. It's called the Brooklyn Papyrus. And this actually is a list of domestic servants from one estate. We have maybe up to 100 people listed as slaves in Egypt. When we look at those names, 70% of them are Semitic names. And you can literally pick up Israelite names in there. Menachem, Issachar, and Asher, the names of two other tribes of Israel. Shifra, one of the Hebrew midwives in the Exodus story, a name that appears in this document. These are Hebrew Israelite slaves, and they're in a papyrus from the 13th dynasty, not from the 19th dynasty, not from the time of Ramesses II in the New Kingdom, but from the 13th dynasty, the Middle Kingdom.
What does this mean to you? What does it say?
This is real evidence for the time when the Israelites were in Egypt as slaves. It's when you get a text, suddenly you've got history. Archaeology, you have to interpret. When you have a text, this is something very different.
David, can you put a specific date on the Brooklyn Papyrus?
The Brooklyn Papyrus is dated to one reign. The name of the king appears on it, and the king is called Sobekotep III. Now, he's the first king of a mini dynasty in the 13th dynasty, where you have maybe 4 or 5 very powerful rulers coming to the fore, a family of strong pharaohs. And this could be the pharaoh who did not know Joseph, the one who enslaved the Israelites, because it comes maybe 3 or 4 generations after the Middle Kingdom, when Joseph arrives in Egypt. We suddenly find this strong pharaoh, Sobekotep III, and we have this list of slaves with Israelite names.
David, the thing that I'm puzzled by is why so many Egyptologists ignore the Brooklyn Papyrus.
Well, this is the old problem again about time, isn't it? You have a situation here where, although everybody recognizes that this list is a list of Semitic slaves, and everybody recognizes that the names appearing in here are also Israelite names, all this evidence that we're finding in Avaris, this city in Goshen in the Eastern Delta, points us to the period when the Israelites were in Egypt, and that is the period we call the Middle Bronze Age. Most Egyptologists put the period of the slavery in the New Kingdom, in the 19th dynasty, and here we are in the 13th dynasty, so the things don't match.
So that's why they disregard it.
So they put it to one side and say it's another coincidence.
First, I want to give all the praises and the glory to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, and to His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and to the elders on Great Millstone. Shalom to you, my elders, and And shalom to the hopefully elect brothers and sisters of the house of Israel. Many are called, few are chosen. Many are called, few are chosen. So these were two historians, archaeologists, historians, and even a small hat you saw at the beginning, who unequivocally are showing you that the Hebrew Israelites are a nation of people, of so-called black people, different shades of brown. They're showing you the archaeological evidence that's all throughout Egypt, showing who these Semitic people were that were living amongst the other nations, which were also people of color. As we've always said to you, all right? Esau was in Mount Seir. Esau and Edom and all of his crew, they were up in Mount Seir. They wasn't down in the Nile Valley where Jacob was and his family, all right? Remember that. Esau was up in Mount Seir. All right. They wasn't down in the Nile Valley, in the Delta Valleys. All right. Because when Esau, if I remember, when Esau came to meet Jacob, he was coming down when Jacob was looking to pass through. I think it's in is it Genesis 30? When Esau came with 400 men and he was looking to pass through. Is it Genesis 32? Let me just quickly show you. So I remember. Yeah, I think it's. See, none of those pictures that they were showing you, those archaeological pictures that they are showing you from the Egyptian tombs and the Egyptian, these things are real things. These ain't no paintings or coverings or someone's gone. These are things that go all the way back 3,000, 3,500, nearly 4,000 years. All right. What they're showing you, those pictures on the wall in the Egyptians, pharaohs' tombs. Now, Esau wasn't a Delta person. He wasn't an Asiatic person. Esau was up in, he was here. Let me just quickly get this up on the screen here. Sorry. Esau was here. See, Jacob fear of Esau. All right. And Jacob went on his way. Genesis 32:1. And Jacob went on his way, and the angels of the Most High met him. All right. And when Jacob saw them, he said, this is the power. This is the Most High's host, and he called the name of that place Mahanaim, right? And Jacob sent messages before him to Esau, his brother, unto the land of Seir, the country of Edom. That's where Esau was. Esau was in Mount Seir, in the country of Edom, all right? And this is when Jacob sent messages unto him, and he was frightened because, if I remember, Esau came down to his brother with 400 men. And he commanded them, saying, thus ye shall speak unto my lord Esau, thy servant Jacob says, thus I have sojourned with Laban and stayed there until now, and I have oxen and asses, flocks and men servants and women servants, and I have sent to tell my lord that I may find grace in thy sight. And the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, we came to thy brother Esau, and also he comes to meet thee, and 400 men with him. All right. And that's when Jacob was separating his family. So my point is, Esau was always up in Mount Seir, Edom. He wasn't in the Delta area. He wasn't down in the Delta Crescent there where Jacob was in Canaan, and then down into Egypt where he was. All right, where they finally went into captivity. All right, and it says there. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that was with him. There you go, just like I said, and the flocks and the herds and the camels into two bands, and said, if Esau come to one company and smite it, then the other company which is left shall escape. And Jacob said, O power of my father Abraham, and the power of my father Isaac, Yahweh, which says unto me, return unto thy country and unto thy kindred, I will deal with thee, and I will deal with thee, and I am not worthy of the least of all thy mercies and all thy truth which thou hast showed unto thy servant. For with my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I am become two bands, because he has split his family up into two. Just in case he lost part of his family, there would still be another part of his family of the tribes of Israel that would still be alive. All right. So this is where Esau was. Esau was here. Now the 400 years of slavery, let's just get that up as well. Genesis 15 here was what the Most High came to Abraham in a deep sleep. Here it is. Yeah, Genesis 15 and 12. It says, and when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abraham. And lo, and horror of great darkness fell upon him. Now that horror was referring to the 400 years of slavery that we, the Israelites, were going to go through back in ancient Egypt. This ain't talking about the transatlantic slave trade. Just to show you, right? So these Egyptologists, right? Those were two professors and Egyptologists that were showing you, even that small hat, right? Were showing you that the Israelites that went down into Thingybob,
They disregard it.
were people of color, so-called black people. They were showing you and telling you, even the small hat at the beginning, even he was telling you.
A new Pharaoh arises, and he doesn't remember Joseph. He enslaves the people because they're becoming too numerous and becoming a threat. So he puts them to work and embitters their lives, building store cities of Pithom and Ramses, and makes them create bricks out of mud and straw.
So even the small hat was showing you that they know who the biblical Israelites are. So Genesis 15 here, the dream the vision that Abraham had was to do with the 400 years of captivity that we were going to be under the Egyptian rule. Just like what I say small, but that was a big hat. When the new Pharaoh came in, he did not know Joseph. So it was a different type of rulership. And they saw the Israelites as a threat. Why did they see the Israelites as a threat? Because I got to go back to Genesis 32 now. I'm going to come back to Genesis 15. Genesis 32. This is when Jacob is speaking with the Most High, right? He says, deliver me, I pray thee, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he will come and smite me, and the mother with the children. And thou sayest, I will surely do thee good, and make thy seed, talking about Jacob, the Israelites, as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. And that's what was happening in Egypt. That's what the threat was to the new Pharaoh. So back to Genesis 15, when it says there, and he says unto Abraham, know of a surety thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, Egypt, ancient Egypt, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. This is talking about ancient Egypt. What those Egyptologists were speaking about, that there is evidence that this took place. This is what they was all commenting on. They were speaking about the evidence that shows you that this definitely happened, right? It's just the time periods that people are trying to wrap their heads around. What was the exact time period when it happened? But the event itself took place, as the two professors, Egyptologist professors, were showing you. And like I said, they was all agreeing on one thing, that the Israelites were a nation of so-called black people, so-called people of color. And it says, and also that nation whom thou shalt serve will I judge, and afterwards shall they come out with what? With great substance. This is how you know it's talking about ancient Egypt. Because when we come out of Babylon, right, for those of us that are actually in America, when the elect are delivered out of America, Babylon the Great, you're going to leave there just with the clothes on your back. And even that's going to be changed when you go up into the chariots. You're going to get new bodies, everything that you're wearing on your back, your clothes and your body, everything's going to be changed when you go up into those chariots to receive those new bodies, those immortal bodies. And this prophecy here is quite clear. It says, when you leave this place here, this nation whom thou shalt serve, which was the ancient Egyptians, the pharaohs, the Most High says, will I judge, which is what he did. The Egyptians were the greatest empires, and then they literally came to nothing. to the point of by the time it came back to the point of when the time it came around to the Romans, they were of no power, the Egyptians. All right, the time of Alexander the Great that took them down. But their power started to wane after the 400 years of captivity when they came after the Israelites, when they was crossing over. It wasn't actually the Red Sea, it was above the Red Sea. I forget what it's called. I think it's called the Barren Straits or something, where they actually crossed, basically. That's when the demise of the Egyptians' powers began. So the Lord says, will I judge, which he did do, ancient Egypt, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance. Now, when the Israelites left Egypt, they came out with great substance. That's it. That's it. I think it's thinking about 2. Exodus 2. Hold on. Exodus 2. Exodus 12. Hold on. Let me just see. Oh, Exodus 2. Oh, Exodus 12. Let's try Exodus 12. When they left Passover, the Passover lamb. Let me see if it's here. More for redemption. Okay. Exodus of Israel. It should be here. I believe it's here. I believe it is here. It says, and the Egyptians, Exodus 12 and 33, and the Egyptians were urgent upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste. For they said, we be all dead. All right, this is after the last plagues hit them when the Lord made the angel, the Awashai, killed all the firstborn in Egypt, right? What to do with the Passover, remember? Moses told the Israelites to I think kill a yam with not a yam, a lamb with no blemish, and put the blood on the post of the door, and they must cook the lamb and eat everything the night before, and don't save anything that's left over they were meant to throw away, all right, with unleavened bread. This is where the Passover comes in regarding the exodus out of ancient Egypt. Right, this is where we get the Passover from, because this is the angel of death was Yahushai that passed over Egypt and killed all of the firstborn of the Egyptians, all of those that didn't mark the pillars of their doorpost with the blood of the lamb that was, I think, less than a year old or a year old. It's just back further up in this verse, it will tell you. It says, and the people took their dough before it was leavened, right? Unleavened bread, part of the Passover. Their kneading troughs being bound up in their clothes upon their shoulders. And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. And the Lord Yahweh gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians. Right? And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramesses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot that were men beside the children. So this shows you that they left there with wealth. All right. They was given, and the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. So what did the Lord say? In Genesis 15, let's just quickly go back to it. Genesis 15, verse 13, and he says unto Abraham, know of a surety that thy seed shall serve a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years, ancient Egypt, and also that nation, the Egyptians, whom thou shalt serve, will I judge, as the Lord did, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance, and thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, and thou shalt be buried in a good age. So we left Egypt with what? The Lord said we're going to come out with great substance. What was that great substance? When you go back to Exodus 12, that great substance was here. Where is it gone? Here, and the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and remnant. Talking about ancient Egypt, right? As those professors were showing you, that definitely occurred. They just have a difference on the time period, but it definitely took place. And those people were a nation of people of color, so-called black people. This ain't talking about this 400 years of captivity is not talking about Babylon the Great America. It's not talking about the captivity that you served under that's it, yeah, the Gulf of Suez. Yeah, Tawada, brother Yehuda. That's what they crossed over, the Gulf of Suez. They didn't actually go over the Red Sea. It was the Gulf of Suez, which is further up from the Red Sea, basically. All right, same water that runs into the Red Sea, but it wasn't the actual Red Sea, it was further up. That's where the Israelites crossed, just so you understand. So when you go back to, and even here in Acts chapter 7, all right, Stephen addresses the council and he speaks on this 400 years of captivity, just to show you, right? He says, Acts 7:1, then the high priest asked Stephen, are these accusations true? This was Stephen's reply, brothers and fathers, listen to me. Our glorious power, Yahweh, appeared to our ancestor Abraham in Mesopotamia before he settled in Haran, which is what we just read in Genesis 15. God, the Most High, told him, leave your native land and your relatives and come into the land that I will show you. All right, that's when he left his father's house, right? So Abraham left the land of the Chaldeans and lived in Haran until his father died. Then the Most High brought him here to the land where you now live, right? The promised land. But the Most High gave him no inheritance here, not even 1 square foot of land. It's true. The Most High Yahweh did promise, however, that eventually the would belong to Abraham and his descendants, even though he had no children yet. Shows you that Abraham had to come back in the reincarnation as an Israelite, because the Most High promised that the whole land would belong to Abraham, all right, and his descendants, even though he had no children yet, before he had Isaac. So Abraham was going to come back in the reincarnation as an Israelite to inherit that land in the future. And then the Most High also told him that his descendants would live in a foreign land, Egypt, ancient Egypt, where they would be oppressed as slaves for 400 years. But I will punish the nation that enslaves them, the Most High Yahweh said, and in the end they will come out and worship me here in this place. This is talking about ancient Egypt. This is what's, so even Stephen, the apostle Stephen, is speaking on the same great event that took place to the children of Israel, to the Israelites. And it says that Yahweh also gave Abraham the covenant of circumcision at that time. So when Abraham became the father of Isaac, he circumcised him on the 8th day, and the practice was continued when Isaac became the father of Jacob, and when Jacob became the father of the 12 patriarchs of the Israelite nation. These patriarchs were jealous of their brother Joseph and sold him to be a slave in Egypt, but the Most High was with him and rescued him from all his troubles, and the Most High gave him favor before Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and the Most High Yahweh also gave Joseph unusual wisdom, so that Pharaoh appointed him governor over all Egypt. This is the Pharaoh that knew Joseph, just like what those Egyptologist professors were saying at the beginning, and put him in charge of the palace. This is the Pharaoh that knew Joseph. But a famine came upon Egypt and Canaan. There was great misery, and our ancestors ran out of food. Jacob heard that there was still grain in Egypt, so he sent his sons, our ancestors, to buy some. The second time they went, Joseph revealed his identity to his brothers, and they were introduced to Pharaoh. Then Joseph sent for his father, Jacob, and all his relatives to come to Egypt, 75 persons in all. So Jacob went to Egypt. He died there, as did our ancestors. Their bodies were taken to Shechem and buried in the tomb Abraham had brought for a certain price from Hammer's sons in Shechem. As the time drew near when the Most High would fulfill his promise to Abraham, the number of a people in Egypt greatly increased. As the Most High told Jacob, they're going to become like the sand of the sea. But then a new king came to the throne of Egypt, who knew nothing about Joseph. Exactly what those Egyptologists was telling you at the beginning, right? This king exploited our people and oppressed them, and forcing parents to abandon their newborn babies so they would die. At that time, Moses was born, a beautiful child in the Most High's eyes. His parents cared for him at home for 3 months. And when he had abandoned him, Pharaoh's daughter adopted him and raised him as her own son. Moses was taught all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and he was powerful in both speech and action. One day, when Moses was 40 years old, he decided to visit his relatives, the people of Israel. He saw an Egyptian mistreating an Israelite, so Moses came to the man's defense and avenged him, killing the Egyptian. And it says, Moses assumed his fellow Israelites would realize that the Most High Yahweh had sent him to rescue them, but they didn't. The next day he visited them again and saw 2 men of Israel fighting. He tried to be a peacemaker. Men, he said, you are brothers. Why are you fighting each other? But the man in the wrong pushed Moses aside, who made you a ruler and a judge over us. He asked, and you going to kill me as you killed, are you going to kill me as you killed that Egyptian yesterday? So then it goes into what happened to them, and it goes through the whole story, how they left Egypt and so forth. But this is what he was talking about. So even the apostle Stephen was speaking on the whole story to do the 400 years of captivity in ancient Egypt. But it was just the fact that those Egyptologists, professors, was showing you that they know for a fact what they were showing you here, who the true children of Israel are.
It was intriguing to see this type of construction in different parts of Egypt. Were any of these bricks molded by the hands of Israelite slaves? However, Mansour was quick to remind me that these types of mud bricks don't prove any connection to the Israelites. In his search for evidence that fits the idea of Israelite slavery, Professor James Hoffmeyer focuses on the first half of the New Kingdom because he favors a Ramesses Exodus date. There he finds a very interesting set of evidence. It states in the biblical story that the Hebrews were supposed to make bricks from mud and straw. Is there any evidence of that?
We have 2 lines of evidence that this practice referred to in Exodus chapter 1 and Exodus chapter 5 really was the sort of thing going on. We have the depiction in the tomb of Rechmireh. He was a vizier or prime minister under Thutmose III in the 15th century. And there we can see POWs, both Semites from Canaan and Syria, working alongside prisoners of war from Nubia, black Africans. And there they are making bricks, overseen by Egyptian taskmasters with sticks. And so it's very clear that this was the treatment of prisoners of war. And we see these forms.
And the Israelites were prisoners of war, or were prisoners really, under the new Pharaoh. All right. So I'm going to leave it there. I just kind of wanted to bring that up. A bit more information to show you once again, that we are the true children of Israel. We are the children of Yasharallah. As the brother says here, Mark 4:22, for there is nothing hid which shall not be manifested, neither was anything kept secret, but that it should come abroad. Everything always eventually has to come to the light. As always, I want to give all the praises and the glory to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, and to his only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to our apostles and to the elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to you, and shalom to you, brothers and sisters who have been edified. I pray you were edified today. And, Tuada to the brothers that were putting up those precepts, as always. As I always say, keep praying, keep safe, repent, and hold on to this truth. Shalom, shalom, shalom. All praises.